Morning, everyone. We're just waiting for the waiting room to fill into the actual Zoom webinar. Looks like the first wave has come in. So I will welcome to CALS Comm workshop. And for October, we're focusing on NC State Extension and their branding, marketing, and storytelling. And thankfully, we have Justin Moore and Julie Hayworth-Perman to give us a little bit of information on these topics. So Justin is the Director of Marketing and Communication for NC State Extension, and he's been part of Extension family for nearly 12 years, having his career starting with marketing, public relations, and a variety within agencies before coming to NC State. So Justin and Julie help promote the ongoing growth and success of Extension by helping tell the collective stories for not just NC State Extension, but all the community programs, and work in collaboration with NCA&T on NC Cooperative Extension Partnership. So welcome, Justin. And Julie Hayworth-Perman is a veteran marketer with nearly 20 years of agency experience and in behavior change marketing. She joined NC State Extension in 2018 as marketing communications specialist. Julie works with all 101 local extension centers to train staff on best practices for marketing in the NC Cooperative Extension brand at the local level, as well as telling effective brand building stories. On campus, Julie works with key extension programs like 4-H to bolster communications with stakeholders and other target audiences. Woo!
That was a mouthful, Janine.
You are both very prepared to tell us about all the things today. So take it away.
All right. Well, thank you, Janine. I appreciate the introduction and you having us today. And thanks to everyone for joining us. I was looking at the registration sheet before joining today, and it looks like there's a pretty good crowd, a nice diverse crowd as well, as far as some of our county extension folks, campus faculty and staff, both extension and non-extension. So we're pleased to have all of you, and I think and hope that you'll all walk away with something valuable and useful today as it relates to extension branding and marketing. So as Janine mentioned, I'm Justin Moore, Marketing and Communications Director for NC State Extension. And before we really dig into the meat and potatoes today, I want to share just a couple more quick things about our Extension Marketing and Communications team, who we are, how we operate. And it won't take too long because really there's only two of us as far as two full-time extension communicators at the state level, Julie and myself, or the J&J team as we're known in the Butler building. So Janine touched on some of this, but Julie and I provide strategic communications, expertise and resources and help generally that increase the visibility and value of extension. And that probably goes without saying, but it also involves both campus and county efforts. And we'll talk a little bit more, the heart, I guess, of today's session is going to be about what our extension brand looks like and how we integrate and implement across the state and what that can mean for you. So we operate within CALS Communications, which really is a boon for extension employees across the state, because in addition to Julie and I, they're able to tap into a wealth of resources that the college communications team offers. So that's really a wonderful working relationship for us. And then last quick thing, we are based at NC State. We're 100% extension NC State employees, but we often work with colleagues at NCA&T and other partner institutions as well to support university efforts. So, campus-based programs and initiatives, as well as the county-based North Carolina Cooperative Extension Partnership efforts. So we're all over the place. But that's a little bit more about us and how we operate, just some more background context to gnaw on there. So about those meat and potatoes, as far as our main discussion topics today, I tried to break this down into two fairly general categories, mainly to make it easier to digest for myself and hopefully you. So I'm going to spend most of my time. I'll talk for the first half of this, maybe 20 minutes or so before Julie takes over, and we'll try to leave some time at the end for Q&A. But feel free, if you have a pressing question about something that you're seeing on the screen throughout the session, feel free to pop a question in the chat box and Janine will try to throw that out to us. But again, I'm going to introduce some of the what I like to think of as the foundational information related to our extension brand, starting with a very brief branding 101. I know there's a lot of professional communicators in this training today, but some aren't. And I think it helps to start with a baseline definition of what we mean when we say we're talking about branding. And then walk through the brand multiverse, as I call it, our architecture, how extension fits into the bigger brand solar system, if you will, and what that looks like. And then we'll spend the rest of the time talking about more action-oriented items. So how does that play out in the field? How do we equip our brand ambassadors with guidance and resources and tools, as well as work with them on local marketing planning, telling our collective story? So it's a lot, but I think we can get through it, and I think it'll be useful if we actually do. So as I was saying, just quick baseline definition. When we're talking about branding, which we are today, we're not just talking about logos or the graphic elements. When we think of brand, a brand means an individual's or the public's total experience, expectations, and emotional connections, or a lack thereof in some case, with an organization. So dictionary definition to the side, we can distill that to perception. That's what a brand is. It is the total collective perception of everybody about who you are and what you do or what they do or don't know about you. So we can spend a lot of time saying what our brand is or telling people what our brand is, but at the end of the day, it's they, the consuming public, who really define it, if that makes sense, or it is what they translate it to be. Now, all is not lost, right? As communicators, and not just professional communicators like Julie and myself, but I think everyone really at the university has, some degree of responsibility to communicate, right? Whether it's in your job title or whether, it's even if it's not your primary responsibility as faculty and staff, we can't not communicate. And I think that we all play an important role in establishing and growing the brand. So we can collectively influence that perception and grow our brand. So we're going to talk a bit about that today and what that looks like. And before we dig into some more of the specifics regarding what exactly our brand is and some of the tools that we have to help folks tell that story, I like to start with the brand multiverse. That's the last time I'll use that term, I promise. So I just think it helps from I guess context or perspective to think about, again, we're talking about extension today. Where does extension fit into the broader, university brand, knowing that in our solar system, at least, everything revolves around NC State University. That's at the center of our galaxy, and all of the departments and colleges and units, we revolve around that in one way or another. And oh, there's extension down there at the bottom right, that bright, beautiful star. So this obviously is a high level perspective, but if you were to zoom in on that little star down there, extension is its own giant sun with many planets and moons revolving around it. So I guess the moral of the story is that, well, A, it's complex, but B, everything revolves around that university brand. So we want to build upon that and reinforce it as we can through our efforts. And so, and I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time, I promise, on some of this brand architecture talk, but again, I think it helps to have this as perspective, because this also, it illustrates how we approach branding as extension. So like the university, we take a top-down approach to branding, where if you think of it at the top level, you have the core or the parent brand, which in this case is the university. And then as you move down from there, you're just picking up traits, picking up baggage, if you will, from the prior level. So to walk through the extension example, our parent brand is NC State. Extension, much like the College of Agriculture and Life Sciences, is a unit of that parent brand. So we go from NC State to NC State Extension. Go down another level to the, what in the business world, I guess, will be the product level, but for us, it's programs. So that then becomes NC State Extension Master Gardener. Maybe a simpler way to think of it is like an elevator that's going down. We're only picking up passengers. Excuse me, we're only picking up passengers. We're not dropping off. So that's kind of how, at a concept level, we go about branding our programs, is that we want to always be able to tie back to that parent brand. And it doesn't always work out quite this nice and neat, but generally speaking, this is how we go about it. So speaking specifically of extension, what does our extension brand look like? Knowing obviously that we want to connect back to and reinforce the university brand. Extension is a vast organization geographically, programmatically. So how do we make sure that we're growing a collective brand across the state? And really that starts with creating or developing a brand blueprint, the foundation. So looking at, knowing that in one part of the state, we might have folks working with youth and 4-H. We've also got food safety and food nutrition efforts going on. We've got crop production and farm visits and field days, to say nothing of the research stations and field labs. And there's a lot of things going on, a lot of wonderful but different things going on. So how do you, establish or even begin to establish or grow a collective brand when you have so many different services and products located in so many different places? And that starts with kind of, again, identifying that base blueprint, the common denominators, if you will, what we all have in common, what we're all trying to achieve. And that is the brand platform. So that, again, serves as our blueprint. And there are 4 main, I guess, levels or components of the brand platform, starting with the brand promise, and I'll go through each of these a little bit more in a second, but starting with the brand promise to our drivers, which really are our differentiators, down to our personality and how we deliver on our promise. And then the positioning statement, which really is just wrapping all of this together into one cohesive statement that declares who we are and why we're different and better in the marketplace. So when we think about this brand platform, which again is kind of our DNA, right? It says who are we collectively? Thinking back again to how we are in the NC State universe, right? So our blueprint can't be too much different from the universities. We are a sub-brand, we are a little bit different, but it can't be, for example, that they're building a house and we're building a spaceship. There have to be, moral of the story, there have to be some strong similarities and connection points between our brand platform and the universities. And so to walk through a few of those key components now, and this, I promise, this will all come full circle. Like, why is he telling us all of this? You'll see more in a second as to why this is important. So the brand promise is the results of our work, or said differently, it's what we deliver based on our mission. It should clearly and directly support our mission. So for us at Extension, we extend research-based knowledge to all North Carolinians, and we help them transform science into solutions that improve their lives and grow our state. At the end of the day, like the university, our brand promise mirrors the universities. We're creating economic, societal, and intellectual prosperity. We grow North Carolina. Our brand drivers, which really, another way to think about it, these are our differentiating drivers. It's the handful or so of things that make us stand out, what we do best. And I'm not going to read through each and every one of these, but to distill it down for extension, these, again, regardless of program area or where we are in the state, we have the best people. We leverage extensive partnerships in just about all that we do. We deliver research-based expertise. It's trusted, it's science-backed, and we are the leaders in experiential education. And again, I'll talk more to this in a second, but the brand promise and the drivers in particular are key, because when we think about, again, if we have folks working in youth development or food safety, all these different areas, this is what we have in common. We're all working toward a collective mission, and we all reflect these brand drivers in one way or another. So they really form, again, the foundation of our communications, so that no matter what we're communicating, it should always reflect these things. And then our brand personality, again, thinking back to how our blueprint, spaceship and house, we have to be a little more similar than that with the universities. For us at Extension, we are caring, innovative, intellectual, purposeful, and trusted. And this is the how of it all. So how we deliver on our brand promise, how we deliver services. And you'll notice that the majority of those, 3 of them at least, are also in the university's brand platform. So that keeps that connection strong. And I'm not going to read through all this, I promise, but this is just what the positioning statement looks like. So it takes all of those individual components and it puts it together in one strong statement. So if branding was a religion, this would be our holy manuscript, right? This is who we are, what we do, why it's important, and how we rock in the marketplace, more or less. And it's also our guiding compass, our spiritual branding compass as far as how we should communicate. So just to kind of put a bow on it and sum up this part, thinking again about that brand promise. So how we deliver on our mission, our brand drivers, those four traits that are what we do best across the board. And then our personality. So how we as an organization operate. Those things together form the foundation or the blueprint for our brand. So again, whether you're, you have some research appointment, or you're out in the field, county or campus, youth, agriculture, food and nutrition, regardless, it doesn't matter. All of this foundation here applies to everyone and serves, again, kind of as that compass for how we collectively communicate and build a unified brand. So speaking of which, that wraps up the foundational portion. Hopefully that wasn't too painful. Getting more into the how of it all. So given all of that, knowing that the brand platform is key and that we need to reflect that and integrate it into all that we do, how do we equip our brand ambassadors, that our employees across the state, to be able to do this, knowing that many of them, communicating, at least as we do, is not their day job. So how do we make that easy on them? And then also, recognizing that we say this often and fondly, that the heart of extension is in the counties. That's where the majority of our client interaction and engagement takes place. So no matter how many news releases we put out at the state level, or billboards we put up along I-40, or social media campaigns that we invest in, ultimately at the end of the day, most of our clients are going to experience extension at the local level. So we have to make sure that we're all working in sync, and that we're all kind of working from the same script, if that makes sense. And I've already mentioned this, but again, it just kind of underscores the importance of everyone recognizing the brand platform and kind of working off of it. In that extension is really has a big presence, both geographically and programmatically. So that, last time I'll say it for a while, but that brand platform is what ties us all together. It represents our collective DNA. And then thinking also about how we, and I'm not going to get too much in the specifics here, but thinking about how we, again, integrate and how we promote cohesion and consistency across the board. So we've got this brand platform, great. How do we apply that locally? And when I say locally, that could be in the counties, or it could be a campus program. But what are some of the parameters? How do we go about helping folks live into and support that brand? Well, obviously we have style standards as well. So we, for the most part, mirror the university's visual style with the standard color palettes, fonts, tone, the way that we communicate, design conventions. So I'll show you a little bit of the brand side in a minute where we outline that for folks, but that's certainly a component of it. I don't mean to just disregard the visual aspect. That is also key. And then messaging themes. So I've pretty much already touched on this, but again, thinking of those brand drivers, those differentiating drivers of the best people or research-based expertise, extensive partnerships, and leaders in experiential education. I guess I can't say it enough that all of our extension communications should fall within or reinforce as many of these buckets as possible. So if you're in a county center wanting to, tout a new agriculture program, let's be sure to do so in a way that checks as many of these boxes as possible. Or if you're on campus doing, doing research on field plots on pumpkins in the mountains, or something of that nature, same deal. We still want to be reflecting these same core characteristics and how we ultimately strive to improve lives and grow the state. So that kind of serves, again, as the framework for our brand and our communications across the board. And that ultimately is how we at least try to promote consistency and cohesion across a very diverse organization where the J&J team is outnumbered about 500 to 1. But the good news is that it can and does work, and that at the end of the day, if folks are adhering to that framework, those style standards, that they're reinforcing those messaging themes, more or less living into that brand platform. I know Brad Bolander and Comm are fond of this concept, the rising tide lifts all boats. And that's kind of self-explanatory, but I like it as well because it explains how efforts that take place in Beaufort County or the Blackland Farm Managers Tour, how the brand value that we gain from those efforts also helps everyone else across the state that's connected to the brand, or whether it's something on campus or something out in the mountains in Buncombe County. The work that we do when we're all communicating and supporting the brand, it benefits one another, and we all rise with that and benefit from that. So I want to take a little bit of time. So that's a lot of talking on my part, but what are some of the actual tools and resources? Again, knowing that most of our extension employees aren't full-time communicators, and they don't have time to start from scratch. Like, am I, do I have all of my brand drivers checked here? So we lean pretty heavily on templates and other resources like that to make it easier on them to live into that brand. So we develop a lot of plug and chug resources. And hang on one second, I will share. And you all can go here as well. Enter. If you want to take a peek at some point, but I'm going to make this real quick because I think I've only got a couple minutes left. But on our brand site, you'll see where we have it outlined or organized by the different related entities. So we have our cooperative extension partnership, which involves A&T and county governments and whatnot. But for the purposes today, I'm just going to use NC State Extension as an example. So once you go into the brand site, marketing resources is where you're going to find most of these tools. And we offer a variety of templates and resources to help our folks communicate and again, support that brand from digital billboards and email templates. We have the logos and on-brand icons that folks can download and use. We have guidance on media resources and news release templates, PowerPoint slides. I won't go through each and every one of these, but just wanted to give you a quick visual if anyone decides to come back and reference some of this at some point. But so in other words, we try to provide the framework for them so where they're more or less entering the story and promoting their local efforts, and that they're not having to worry so much about, am I using the right font? Is this a brand approved color? We don't want folks to worry about that so much as, are they using these resources and, making sure that they tell stories that reflect our mission. So we'll do a time check. I think I don't want to steal from Julie's time, so I won't go too much deeper into this. But in any case, I encourage you to visit the brand site. That's where a lot of these specific tools are. And Julie also is going to talk a little bit more about some of our resources, specifically how we help folks develop strategic marketing plans. And also, I can't talk and type at the same
Justin,
time.
we got a shout out from Lucy. Thank you for the extension marketing site. It is full of useful tools and guidance.
Woohoo! Thank you, Lucy, for the plug. We appreciate that. So yeah, there's the link on the screen one last time, real quick. I encourage you to go there where you can find many of these resources. And then I will hand the baton off to Julie, who's going to talk more about some more I consider valuable resources as far as how we help folks plan and prioritize for strategic marketing and how to tell our collective extension story. So with that, Julie, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Justin. You mentioned that that figure about it's 2 of us to 1,000. You said we're outnumbered 500 to 1, and all of a sudden I thought, wow, that's a little daunting. So hadn't really thought about it that way before. So yes, I'm going to talk to you today about 2 things. First of all, developing a marketing plan, and then storytelling. And in the interest of time, I'm not really going to walk you through our training, necessarily how we do it, so much as I'm going to show you what resources we make available to our both county and campus staff. And that's the materials for marketing are more geared toward county personnel for us, but we certainly have adapted them on the fly for campus-based programs before we've gone through the marketing planning process with 4-H, for example. So certainly if you're looking at these materials, you decide you want to use them and you need some help tweaking them to suit your needs, just give me a shout. But what we have available, this slide that Justin just pulled up, this is a brief overview of our marketing planning process. And what we do is we have a workbook that I'm going to show you. We're going to switch over to the website in just a minute. But I wanted to just kind of run through this. Our workbook takes you through analyzing the current situation. And that basically means you need a marketing plan, you get your team together, you sit down around a table and you talk. And to do this, you want everybody in your department or everybody in your local center or everybody who works on your program, because everyone comes at the work that you do from a different place. So understanding what's really happening that impacts the messaging you're going to create, the way you want to market, who you want to target, that really needs to be a team effort. So walk through the exercise, analyze the current situation, and that puts you into a great place to go into step 2, which is the hardest step of writing a marketing plan. And that is, what do you want to accomplish? That's your goal setting exercise. But if you've talked first, you'll see that some of those goals are naturally going to kind of come out. Step 3 is analyzing your target audiences. Our materials talk to you a little bit about how to dig deeper into who those folks are. It's not only, yes, I want to talk to prospective students, or I want to talk to farmers in my county. It's not that simple. It also asks you to go in and do some research, look to some different organizations, look at census data, look at, your local media's, their kits that they put together, their ad sales kits, they usually have some great data. You can call cell phone companies and see if there's a way to access information about cell phone usage. There's just lots of different things that you can do to dig deeper into those target audiences. Step 4 is assessing tools you already have. You don't want to reinvent the wheel, right? Step 5, of course, is budget. And in the case of extension, a lot of times the budget answer is we don't have anything to spend. So the good news is there's things you can do that don't cost anything, thanks to social media. What do you want folks to do? So developing that clear call to action is important. The metrics piece, number 7, is huge. And that's not just counting P's at the end of your project. That is setting things up as you're establishing programs or campaigns, setting your stage so that those metrics are easily collected, and being very deliberate about checking in periodically, because if you're watching those metrics as you go, you can change gears to optimize to what's going to work best for you. And then ultimately, step number 8 is thinking through how everything works together. So this campaign that we just finished, that was great. We accomplished our goals. It was wonderful. Let's make sure that the next thing we go to work on fits seamlessly with it. And that's really how you build your brand, is that consistency, that deliberate way of marketing everything that you do in the same voice. All right, I'm going to share my screen real quick so that you can see. All right, does everybody see it? Justin, do you see it?
Yes, ma'am.
All right. So this is our resource on the intranet, which everybody can get to. And this is where all of our materials for building an effective marketing plan live. So if you go to the extension intranet, intranet.ces.ncsu.edu, you go over here on the left to brand, and then you choose cooperative extension. And you will actually find, let me just click back there for a second. Choose cooperative extension. And then you go down this list and find local marketing planning. So even if you're on campus right now, even if you're a department and not extension, you can go here, click on local marketing planning, and you can access these resources. And we encourage anybody to use these. And we don't mind if you're a department and you want to pull our logo off and put your departmental logo on there, that's completely fine. This is for the benefit of our college and everything that we do.
Julie, we had a question from Heather Gordon about the frequency of building a campaign. Do you build a campaign each year? The time frame you recommend?
Well, I would say this big marketing planning exercise, you need to do it and then maybe do a little refresh every year, possibly go through the full process every 2 or 3 years, or if something major changes with your program or within your department. Anytime you think you need to refocus your goals, you would go back and do it. When I use the term campaign, I apologize, it's not completely appropriately used here. I'm referring to one effort. So in extension, a lot of times we may be marketing one program, med instead of meds. Or at the local level, we might actually be looking at a series of workshops. We want people to sign up. We're marketing the opportunity to register. But the marketing planning process is going to make sure that every program we market, every event we try to pull people to, that it's all working together under the same goals and that we're speaking in the same voice. So I hope that kind of answers that question. But let me know if it doesn't. Happy to try again.
She said, thanks, that helps.
Very good. All right, so this is the worksheet that you just took a look at. And I apologize, I'm gonna be looking off screen for a minute with my second monitor. But if you scroll down, you will find the workbook that I mentioned. So under core materials, so this file, this actually takes you through. So you get, I know there's a lot of words on here, and that's just part of what Justin and I do, is we love words. But if you read through it, it's actually gonna walk you through how to sit down and how to kind of talk through this marketing planning. So you're sitting down with your team. All of this at the beginning is about having one person to run the process, somebody who's enthusiastic about marketing, even if they're not an expert. The discussion that we talked about, the analysis, it's just working through a mini SWOT analysis with your team. And then of course we go into the goal setting exercises, which, as I said, that's the hardest part. And it usually takes a couple of hours for your full team to sit down and just work through the goals. But as you see, this is a worksheet very much like you might have in, high school social studies, where you're going to just sit down, read it, think about it, fill in the blanks, all of that. We've tried to make it as easy and as deliberate as possible for our teams to work on. So it's about 11 pages overall. We think it's pretty useful. The counties who have gone through the process seem to really like it. The 4-H team seemed to work well for them in thinking through some goals. So I hope you find that useful. All right, and then, whoops, y'all don't want to look at my email. Where did it go? Where did it go? It looks like I need to pull it back up. I apologize. I got a little click happy.
It works to our advantage, Julie, because we get to see how you get there again. We're reiterating.
Yeah, it can be a little hard to find things sometimes on the extension intranet. So happy to help with that anytime. Okay, and as we scroll down, kind of keep on going through here, we're talking about the We Grow NC campaign. I won't spend much time on that, but suffice it to say that's an actual media campaign that the College of Ag and Life Sciences and Extension worked together to put out there. So we do encourage Extension at every level at this point to think about the We Grow NC campaign and look for ways to use that language, because the more we're using the same language, the more awareness we're able to build. So I know I'll mention Union County for a moment. They've done a great job incorporating the We Grow language into their newsletter, We Grow Union County. So, just that kind of consistency is something that we talk about here. And then we have links to, at the bottom of this page, we have links to more about the brand. So really, that's all I want to say about marketing planning today. I am happy to have more in-depth conversations if you want a little one-on-one help with that, if you think these materials might be useful to you. But take a little time at your leisure and read through them and see if you think they might be helpful. So I'm going to stop sharing now. We'll go back to the PowerPoint, Justin, if you want to put that back up. Okay, any questions about marketing before I start talking storytelling? I'm going to trust that that's a no, or Janine would tell me so. All right, telling an extension story. Let's move on, Justin. Talking about the reasons for storytelling, I think, this is kind of our guiding mantra for extension, and that's basically we're looking for consistency and clarity. We're looking to define extension stories so everybody understands the kinds of things that we want to be out there talking about, helping people to understand the difference between outcomes and impacts. And with extension, we have a lot of different, our folks are asked to tell the same story in multiple different ways for multiple different channels. So whether it's reporting through our ERS system, whether it's sending a story to Extension or to CALS Communications so that we can get your names out there. There's just a lot of different ways that our people are asked to tell a story. So what we are actively trying to do is to streamline that between our reporting folks, between our web folks, our video folks, and of course in our marketing team. We're trying to use the same language as much as possible to make it easier for our folks to tell a story. It's a work in progress, I will say. But what we're going to talk about really quickly is, why do we tell stories? How do we define an extension story? We're going to look at those outcomes and impacts. And I probably won't talk about story development steps, but there are a couple of slides that we'll just throw up there really quickly. And this is a link to our storytelling resources. Again, you'll find it on the intranet. And you can get to it if you're going back to that same brand page for Cooperative Extension. When you scroll down, you'll see it where it says storytelling. So you can find it that way as well. Okay, moving on. All right, I think a lot of folks ask the question of why story is important. And this is one of my favorite authors, Kate Forsyth. If you've never read her, but you like fantasy, you definitely want to check her out. But she wrote in a blog post that stories and storytelling are an essential element of what it means to be human. They help us make sense of the world and pass on universal lessons and wisdom. And I just love this because it really explains to, I think for us, for folks who think more perhaps scientifically, it helps us understand why maybe data is not all we can deliver for it to resonate. So let's flip to the next slide. So when we talk about what stories can do for extension, and this ties back to this quote, but stories bring data to life and create those emotional connections. It's not just data points, or it's not just numbers. It's kind of the music or the narrative that goes along with that. And through that narrative, we can reinforce information and we can make things memorable. So if you think about connecting the dots, if you're looking at a dot-to-dot exercise, right, where you go from 1 to 2 to 3, the story is the lines between the dots. You can either look at a whole bunch of dots, or you can look at the picture that it creates once those lines are filled in. So think about stories as the lines between the dots. And ultimately, if we're doing a good job telling our stories, we are growing our brand. And we decided to define an extension story to help folks understand what should I be telling. We look through our reporting system sometimes, and the things we find really aren't stories. They're just a list of what I did, and maybe it doesn't go through all of the points. Now, that said, that's just occasionally. We usually get wonderful, rich stories through ERS. But we felt like defining an extension story would help people select what they plug into the reporting system, what they talk about in their newsletters. And we started that by saying every extension story has to be rooted in our mission to grow North Carolina. And we tied that back to the brand promise. So I think everybody in Extension understands very clearly that what we do is to create economic, societal, and intellectual prosperity. So we're growing the lives, lands, and economies of North Carolina, and every story that we put out there should tie us back to that. Next. To help our folks do this better, we developed an Extension worksheet. And I know you can't really see it here, but this is on the storytelling site. And what the worksheet does is it walks everybody through capturing that basic information. I think when we look at storytelling, the hardest thing is looking at that blank piece of paper, or I guess in modern words, it would be looking at that blinky cursor on a white screen. So the storytelling worksheet that we developed helps people get their thoughts on paper and build a framework. It doesn't write the story for them necessarily, but it does ask key questions to help kind of get over that initial hump of storytelling. So I encourage you to take a look at that. We do have, if you can flip back just 1 second, Justin. We do have these 4 points that every extension story really needs to tie to one of these 4 points. We're either highlighting our people, we are talking about our partnerships, we are talking about our research-based resources and programs, or we are emphasizing hands-on, kind of that how-to individualized solutions. So our stories will always do at least one of these bullets, but by the nature of what we do, our storytelling usually covers more than one bullet in any story. Okay, let's move on. One of the things that we really try to help our teams understand are the difference in outcomes and impacts. Outcomes are short-term or medium-term, but basically they answer the question, what have I done? So this is our counting P's, for example. These are our numbers. It's participation, it's knowledge gain, it's, we changed a behavior, we changed a policy, it's that kind of thing. And those are very important. We want to convey those. But where we really make a difference, where our stories grow in importance, is when we start talking about impacts. And I think, I say this a lot, but I think in a scientific community like we are with the university, with the College of Ag and Life Sciences, we as a group are kind of uncomfortable with projection. And kind of saying there's potential things that could happen, or if this happens, then we're going to change things for the better on a larger scale. So if you think about a lot of what we do with our family consumer sciences is health oriented, and health impacts are really difficult. I mean, it takes a long time for those those impact numbers to come through. But by doing a little extra research, looking at what's happening in the county or in the community or in the state, looking at data from BRFSS, or possibly it's farm census data, whatever, we can start building some projections and talk about programs like this are important because ultimately they change the economy in this way, or they change environmental outcomes in this way. So just taking it a step further, we can actually show how we at Extension make a long-term difference. And a lot of times that's what folks like our policymakers are looking for, like our county commissioners want to see. So we just really encourage our staff to think beyond just the numbers coming out of this program or this event. Okay. I'm not really going to talk much about story development. All of this is on the website, but let's just real quickly throw those slides up there. With story development, the first thing we need to think about is what are we trying to accomplish with this story? What do we want to have happen as a result? And we, I guess, couch the information that we want to convey in a way that meets that end. So if you are trying to get funding for a project, let's say you're telling a story because you're writing a grant proposal, you're thinking everything you do needs to strive to attain that goal of funding. So you have to think through, what do these decision makers need to hear or need to understand to open them up to the possibility of funding my project? And we aim our story that direction. So once we get that goal set, we go through a development process of defining our topic very clearly, and then figuring out the narrative that goes along with it. 3 and 4 are a little bit different. Step 3 is about knowing where we're going to tell the story. We're going to write it differently for social media. We might put it in a newsletter. We might pitch it to local media, whatever that may be. And then step 4 is measuring how well we got the story out there. So, did we reach the number of folks we wanted to? Did we hit the right target audience? How many newspapers picked up our story? Whatever that may be. How well engaged on social media were we with this story? And by doing that, we better understand how to tell stories better in the future. So this is a little bit more about defining the story, your topic, your target audience. Go on to the next one, Justin. Developing the story. Again, we refer back to that story development worksheet. It's a really great thing to use at this step. And the next slide, we get into characters and setting a little bit, and then kind of more questions that help push that story to the next level. Again, all of this is available at the storytelling link that you see here. And I think I left 11 minutes for questions. I'm sorry to fly through that so fast, but we just wanted you to see all the tools that we have available that you can use with your department or with your teams.
Thanks so much, you two. We have 11 minutes. Bring on the questions.
And for those that may be shy or don't want to ask certain questions in front of others, feel free to give us a shout individually as well. We're here to help. So you can still ask now. I'll hang around. But if you don't want to ask now, just ping us, email or phone or whatever, and we can do it that way too.
I have a question.
Yes.
So I'm a 4-H agent out in the West District, and I get confused about the scaffolding, sort of, Justin, what you were talking about at first, in terms of whose logo and which tagline I'm supposed to use when and where, because 4-H has a whole series of those locally, state, and nationally as well. So I just, and maybe that's just specific to 4-H, and I should talk with you about that later, but I'm just curious your thoughts on that, either of you.
Yeah, I'll go. I was waiting to see if Julie was gonna start. I mean, it's probably a side conversation to have. I will say that with something like 4-H, which is 4-H is always a little bit of an outlier in a good way, because it is an established national brand, right? And we don't want to mask that. We want to leverage that. So that really kind of falls under the program branding umbrella, I suppose. But yeah, I mean, it's situational as well. I mean, definitely we again want to lean on that Clover, but I guess it depends on the specifics. We can talk more about the logo arrangements and things of that nature. But Julie, would you add anything to that? I guess I don't know how to explain it without getting into like real specifics.
Well, one thing I would say is anytime we are speaking to local audiences, we're using the cooperative extension brand. So if you're talking about 4-H in your community or in your county, you're gonna, if you go to the cooperative extension brand pages, you'll find how to use that partner logo that combines the Clover with the cooperative extension logo. It gets a little more murky when you start talking about like 4-H camps, for example, because they're more of an NC State extension versus cooperative extension. So, I would just kind of just whenever you run into questions like that, contact us. But for the most part, when you are communicating directly with your youth or programs that you're running, you're going to use it in combination with the cooperative extension brand. And I thank you for thinking about that, because I think it's extremely important that we always tie cooperative extension to 4-H. It's important from a funding perspective, from brand awareness, that people understand that 4-H and cooperative extension go hand in hand.
Thanks.
We also had a question come in from Marcello. What are the contexts in which to use NC cooperative extension branding as opposed to NC state extension?
That is an excellent question, and one we get often. We realize that is probably not the most simple or ideal way of doing things. But long story short, cooperative extension is just as it sounds. It is a partnership. So if you think of it like the United Nations, right? There's individual countries that are part of a bigger partnership. NC State is its own country, it's its own individual entity. So when we're doing things on our own, whether it's in a research lab or a publication, if NC State is developing, funding, distributing any given resource, it's a university resource, then it's NC State Extension, just like it would be NC State College of Ag and Life Sciences or NC State Department of Horticultural Science. When it comes to cooperative extension, that just refers to local partnership efforts that involve NC State, but it's not a one, it's not a one pony show, right? At the county levels, even in offices where there are no NC A&T employees, it's still not just NC State. The county government has a huge skin in those local efforts. So if it's campus-based and unilateral just from the university, NC State Extension. When we're talking about cooperative extension, we're talking about joint partnership efforts at the county level, if that makes sense. I think I killed the room.
Any other questions? All right. Well, if you think of something later, shout out to us. We're happy to help.
Thanks so much, Justin and Julie. And again, they're happy to answer questions anytime, all the time, sharing ideas about what's going on across the state or on campus that, like Julie now knows, 1 to 500 does seem daunting. So anytime you can proactively share stories about what's going on with your team, it's appreciated. And our next CALS Comm workshop will be on November 19th, and it's going to start at 10:30, and it will focus on using inclusive language in your communications. So I hope to see you all there.
Thanks
Thanks so
Janine.
much.